Well, coming up on today's show, VW could share its electric car platform with Ford. Tesla tells its Model 3 buyers to order now. To avoid a price jump, and EDF Energy partners with Nuve to install smart chargers in the UK. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to EV News Daily. It's Thursday, the 1st of November. Pinch, punch, and all that. It's Martyn Lee here. And I've been through every EV story today that I can find, so you don't have to. If it sounds different on the podcast today, recording on location today, on a road trip to go and see family. So 5 hours at the moment away from where we're heading to tomorrow morning, which is about another half an hour journey on to go see my family for a day, which would be lovely. We're in a B&B right now. If that doesn't translate to where you are listening around the UK, I guess, around the world, I guess you'd say guest house. So basically someone who has a very big house and has sort of opened up their house for, bed and breakfast is what B&B stands for. But that kind of thing, quite popular here in the UK. If you have it around the world, I don't know what you would call it, but that's where we are tonight. Thank you very much to myev.com for helping make the show today. They've built the world's first marketplace all about electric vehicles, totally free to use. They've got a ton of vehicles on there, from your great little city runabouts to the most expensive Teslas you can imagine and everything in between. And you can even learn about and research EVs on there as well. Hello to 2 new patrons. Well, sort of 1.5. Let me explain. New patrons signing up to the podcast. First of all, a patron who's moving from producer to executive producer. So that is basically from a posh coffee a month to a very posh coffee a month. That is our friends at EV Solid State has up their support from producer to exec, and a brand new executive producer is Brian. Well, Brian Thompson emailed me earlier today to say that they have an 11 kilowatt solar system on their house. They've got 3 electric bikes. They've got a Tesla Model S and, drum roll, a Model 3. You lucky so-and-so. They don't eat beef, pork or chicken, which Brian says supposedly does more for the environment than even driving your electric cars. He says, I almost converted a fossil car to electric back in 1992. I think I was born wanting an electric car. Thank you very much, Brian Thompson, who is Brian Thompson. That's Thompson with a P, brianthompson.com if you want to find out who Brian is and what he's all about. Well, I mentioned Faraday Future yesterday on the podcast, and a new article today on NBC News and Autoblog says they might not be too long for the world. They join a long list of battery car startups that have been left on the hard shoulder, says NBCnews.com. Battery electric car company Faraday Future is teetering on the brink of insolvency, according to one of its co-founders. He tendered his resignation, which was reported on the podcast yesterday. Nick Sampson's departure came a week after a number of Faraday employees were laid off and salaries were lowered. Though billed as temporary, the company is running short of cash and don't yet have a clear source of funds, at least announced publicly, for injecting money into the company. Autoblog.com reports that Samson said this, and I quote, "The company is effectively insolvent in both its financial and personnel assets. It will at best limp along for the foreseeable future. I feel that my role in Faraday Future is no longer a path I can follow, and I will leave the company effective immediately. I cannot continue knowing the devastating impact we are having on the lives of our employees, their families and the loved ones, as the ripple effect this will have on lives throughout our suppliers and the industry as a whole," end quote. I'll put a link to those NBC and Autoblog articles in the show notes if you want to find out more. We wish everyone the best of luck when they try and start electric car companies, but it's such a crazy thing to try and do, as Faraday Future are finding out. So much so that Volkswagen and Ford, 2 of the biggest car companies in the world, might end up having to join forces just to make electric cars. I know, that's fascinating, right? Volkswagen could be open to sharing its new platform with Ford. VW and Ford said back in June they were considering a development and production alliance. Now, that would include light commercial vehicles, and that would strengthen both of their positions. Today, the Volkswagen CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, is called Frank Witter, and he said that their strategy is to open up the company much more to partnerships than ever before. According to autonews.com, asked whether that would include Ford, building cars on Volkswagen's platform, the MEB platform, which, as you know, or you may not know, but that's going to be the platform that all of their future cars that are electric powered are built on. Volkswagen aren't going to go down the route of having cars on one platform that have different drivetrains. So the MEB platform is going to be pure electric. They wouldn't rule out sharing that with Ford. So Ford, their forward shortcut and bypass any kind of R&D and development of their own platform and just use VWs. If that were true, I'll put the Auto News link in the show notes for you to read. Well, moving on, and a fascinating story today that I wanted to bring you on the podcast about Tesla. Inverse published an article today based on an email from Tesla about why the new mid-range battery is actually more attractive than the short-range $35,000 Model 3, which is maybe 5 to 6 months away. The email said that Tesla's urging Model 3 reservation holders, the inverse article was all about Model 3 reservation holders buying now before the end of the federal tax credit. They claimed in an email that was published today that the mid-range version of the Model 3 will actually end up costing you less in the long run than the $35,000 Model 3. Of course, Tesla are the first automaker to start tapering down those tax credits from the 1st of January. The email said this, and I quote, "We recently introduced a more affordable Model 3 mid-range battery option for $34,200 after..." They published this price after the federal tax credit and gas savings. Now, some people don't like that. Some people want to see the sticker price, what's the car, and then they'll work out their own savings. What Tesla have begun to do recently, which is quite controversial, is publish the price for sale of their cars, but they're already taking off what they think you might save on gas, which I do agree is a little confusing. And it's not the kind of clear, straightforward pricing that I particularly like. It's a little bit smoke and mirrors, not wanting to go too hard in on Tesla here. It doesn't appeal to me having the price listed after their own estimations of what I might be able to save on gas. Well, that federal tax credit of $7,500 ends at the end of this calendar year. Current delivery timelines: 4 weeks for the West Coast, 6 weeks for Central, 8 weeks for the East Coast. And for delivery under 4 weeks, you can pick up your car directly from the Fremont factory and get that full federal tax credit. Well, staying with Tesla, and Japan's Panasonic Corporation said today that they reported a decline in the quarterly profit far beyond what even analysts were estimating. Costs have been rising at the battery plant that it jointly runs with Tesla. According to Reuters today, business with Tesla has yet to contribute any profit. This is all about building for the long term, right? Panasonic said that it was in talks to add yet another $1.6 billion of investment and take capacity at the Gigafactory in Nevada to over 35 gigawatt hours of production every single year. This expansion would happen between now and the end of March next year. 35 gigawatt hours of battery production every single year is just off the scale. Well, Panasonic is the exclusive battery cell supplier for Tesla cars, but they do have options to open up other supply chains if they need to. As production of their mass market Model 3 accelerated earlier this year, Panasonic had to send more engineers and spend more to increase the cell production. The higher costs and the slower demand for factory automation equipment in China amid the escalating US trade war and tariffs thing that's going on pushed their Q3 operating profit down 15%. I'll put a link to that Reuters article if you want to go deep into the numbers yourself in the show notes. Well, here in the UK, the French energy company EDF Energy has announced a partnership with the green technology firm, I think it's pronounced Nuve, N-U-V-V-E, maybe that's Nuve, to install 1,500 vehicle-to-grid smart chargers for businesses throughout the UK. Under the deal, EDF Energy will roll out Nuve's vehicle-to-grid chargers to its business clients to boost EV chargers and the infrastructure. And that's a fascinating development because lots of people are pinning their hopes on V2G and V2H, vehicle to home. They think it could add 15 megawatt hours of extra capacity, according to powertechnology.com. EDF Energy Managing Director of Customers is Beatrice Bijois, and said this to us in a press release today, and I quote, "With 55% of new vehicles coming on the road through businesses, they're going to play a key role in the transition to EV transport. Through this partnership, we're investing in smart technologies to help the business customers electrify their fleets." And I would love to have some V2G at home and to have a little kind of play with that as an early adopter, maybe even feed into some sort of study. Yeah, the Zoe isn't going to be capable of that, but for any Nissan Leaf or even anyone with a CHAdeMO connector, in theory, I think can take part in V2G trials if something happens in your area. Two more stories today on the podcast, and first of all, here in London in the UK. Well, I'm not in London at the moment, we're on location, but Southwark Council is installing 50 charge points in lamp posts installed by Chargy, that's CHR.GY, all around the area. It's become the first London borough to equip those lamp posts with public charging points. According to Auto Express, lamppost charge point supplier Chargy is putting 50 of the points that the Southwark local authority will install across 2 areas in the borough. The first point has already opened, and it's all part of a £300,000 funding that's happening in Southwark Council with the Go Ultra Low City scheme. These chargers work at 7.7 kilowatts there. That's kind of good enough for parking it all night, park your car, go to sleep, get up in the morning, full tank of electrons, that kind of thing. Fantastic scheme. If you haven't got off-street parking, you've got on-street parking. There's lampposts everywhere. My only concern with that is accessibility. Driving home after work and thinking, is someone parked outside the lamppost that I need? The only way around that, of course, is for every lamppost to have an EV charger on it, a little socket for you to plug in the cable that you keep in your boot, or your trunk, if you're an American listener. And that is the only way around it, sheer scale. And that works with things like Urban Electric as well, who we've spoken to on the podcast before. That is the really clever, innovative pop-up chargers that kind of pop out of the street, the pavement, if you like. They pop up when you get there. Otherwise, they go down below the pavement to just look nice and get nice and safe below ground. Another fantastic idea. And a previous Saturday special that I recorded, if you want to check out that podcast. Right, final one today then. And Michael Holder, who is at Business Green, has raised a really valid point about time of use tariffs, and it's something that I've still not got round to at home. I need to do some sort of either Economy 7 or actually, so Economy 7 here in the UK is where 7 hours of overnight electricity is charged at a cheaper rate, typically about a third of your daytime rate. You normally have to have an extra meter installed, so you have 2 meters under your stairs, normally in the cupboard where your meters are. One of them meters your daytime rate, one of them meters your 7 hours of overnight. But these days with smart meters, being able to look at what you're using second by second, minute by minute, that doesn't seem to appeal to me so much. So I like these new time of use tariffs that use smart meters. And a new report from Octopus Energy has revealed how the time of use energy tariffs that are available now could really help EV owners further reduce their carbon emissions and slash their bills as well. The company published a new carbon emissions findings today called Agile Octopus. It's all about their tariff called Agile Octopus, and it's been running since February earlier this year. Now, this study confirms that smart tariffs, if they're available where you live and you're listening around the world right now, if you have a smart tariff, you can save money and reduce your energy use and your carbon. And it all limits the pressure on the electricity grid as well. This has been hailed as the UK's first half-hourly time-of-use tariff, and it has enabled Octopus customers, in particularly EV drivers who are with Octopus Energy, to choose the cheapest times to charge their cars or when to put their other household items on, the washing machine, the dishwasher, those kind of things, by reducing the peak consumption, typically between early hours of the evening. Everyone gets home from work and cooks their dinner or puts the air conditioning on. If you're listening somewhere in a hot climate around the world, you can reduce that peak by 47% by moving all of your off-peak stuff with a time-of-use tariff. I'll put a full link to that in the show notes. Well, a quick mention for our question of the week this week. It's been, I think, the most replied to question we've ever done, and it is this. It's said by myev.com. If you could put a public charger anywhere, so if I was writing a check for you and you could put in an EVSE anywhere you like, not home, but somewhere else, is it the gym? Is it the shops? Is it the cinema? Is it somewhere between where you live and where you work? Let me know. And it's a blank check. I've signed it. Where would I put it? Where would you put it? If I were theoretically paying for it, what would make your life easier? You can email hello@evnewsdaily.com. That is hello@evnewsdaily.com. Use the YouTube comments, Facebook comments, and there's a feedback little form on my blog at evnewsdaily.com. Thank you very much to the 111 patrons of the show whose generosity means that you get to listen to this every day. If you'd like to become one of those names that I read out, then you can do that at patreon.com/evnewsdaily. I'd invite you to have a look at the link just to see if that's the kind of thing you'd like to do, but no pressure if not. 282 previous episodes live online for free thanks to our patrons, and you can get them on any of the usual podcast platforms. Have a look at our socials by searching EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you tomorrow.